Hello film fans and welcome to this episode of The Shirkin. Now, imagine if you will that I'm about to present to you a pitch for a new dynamic TV series. It's about this bloke, let's call him Obi-Wan, it's just a name, and all his friends have been killed in this huge purge. And his best friends just betrayed him, and now he's stuck in fear and trembling on this tiny little planet in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a desert. Then he goes through various trials and tribulations, and at the end of the show, he's still stuck on a tiny little planet in the middle of nowhere in a desert. That's kind of the problem that Deborah Chow and the producers of the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV series are faced with at the moment. Because we know where Obi-Wan Kenobi begins, and we know where he ends. So, what do you do in between? Aren't you kind of faced with pretty few options? Or are you? Because it is a problem, but it's also an opportunity. Because if you look at some of the other Disney Plus Star Wars shows that have been around, they are kind of overburdened with plot, particularly things like Boba Fett, where they seem to be trying to cram in so much plot details that they sort of forgot to explore the interesting characters along the way. So, in some ways, it could actually work to the series' benefit that they can't change too much stuff and therefore have to delve in deep to what Obi-Wan Kenobi, the character, is going through, rather than have him running around chopping people up with his lightsaber 24/7. Now, I'm a massive fan of Obi-Wan Kenobi as a character, and I have actually read the comic book series that are set in between the end of Revenge of the Sith and the beginning of A New Hope, and they're quite good. I mean, they're very low-key, because obviously they can't change too much, so it's got things like Obi-Wan Kenobi fighting sand people to get parts from the Jawas to give Luke Skywalker a new speeder, which he donates anonymously. Or he's protecting moisture farmers from Jabba the Hutt and fights the bounty hunter Black Chrysanthemum. It's all quite small scale, but it's very interesting, and it's an interesting kind of look into Obi-Wan Kenobi as a person. And I've always been a really big fan of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think he kind of bucks the trend in Star Wars to have a kind of messiah character. A lot of Star Wars is based around the idea of someone being special simply because of their lineage or their birth. Not always, of course, but it does seem to be that that's the way Star Wars has gone in recent years. But, of course, that's not really how it started off. Luke Skywalker wasn't special because of who his father was in A New Hope. He was special because he tried hard, because he endured. He saw his mentor die. He saw his only parents he'd really got, his aunt and uncle, die. But he still kept on going. A New Hope is kind of the de facto hero's journey, if you like. And that's one of the reasons why Luke Skywalker was so popular and why the series really took off. And I've always seen Obi-Wan Kenobi as following that trend. Obi-Wan's not special because he's a Kenobi. Who are the Kenobis? We don't ever find out, even in the kind of backstory stuff they do in the Clone Wars. Kenobi's special because he tries hard, because he's not the most talented Jedi, but he's the most persevering. And also, in an order which is full of these kind of sage figures like Yoda and Mace Windu, and even Count Dooku is a kind of evil sage figure in a way. Obi-Wan Kenobi lends a nice strand of humour to it. You know, he kind of sees the flaws in the Jedi Order, and he can point them out, but he points it out in a very kind of charming manner. It's one of the reasons why Ewan McGregor was so popular in the Star Wars prequels, despite the fact that those films, generally speaking, weren't that well received. He kind of adds a charm to the character, which you don't get so much in the Alec Guinness character, at least not so much. And so I think it'd be really interesting to see them bridge that gap. Ewan McGregor, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, who seems quite downcast and depressed, to the kind of sage zen-like Alec Guinness at the beginning of A New Hope. Of course, there are some villains in this new Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Darth Vader seems to be making an appearance. I mean, he's been quite heavily teased in the trailers, but it seems that the primary villain's going to be the Inquisitors. Now, I must admit, I've never been a massive fan of the Inquisitors in Star Wars. I mean, I think they're a good idea. I like the idea of, you know, these Force-sensitive people who are going around hunting Jedi. But I've always sort of saw them as a bit gimmicky. I think it's partly to do with their stupid lightsabers. You know, the helicopter-bladed ones that sort of spin round. I think it's going to be really interesting to see them in live action, to see how they try and put them onto the big screen, if you like. I mean, I know it's a small screen, but I want to see how it looks actually in real life, for want of a better word. Because when you see them in things like Star Wars Rebels, it always seemed to me that they looked a bit tacky. I mean, apart from anything else, I've always wondered how on earth did they stop themselves with those, spinny lightsabers from cutting off their own fingers? Do the Inquisitors get a manual when they're in Inquisition training that says, now, some points to remember in lightsaber combat? We would greatly remind all you Inquisitors and all the sisters and brethren that make up our little company that they should avoid putting their fingers and arms within reach of their lightsaber blades during rotation. You can imagine some really nasty injuries, can't you, before they got the hang of it? Oh dear, the seventh brother has once again cut off his own arm. Quick, we need a bionic arm replacement again. But all joking aside, and I realise that probably wasn't very funny, I do think the Inquisitors do make for some interesting antagonists in this show. For one thing, you can actually do some interesting stuff with them. Obi-Wan Kenobi can't kill Darth Vader. We know how it ends. We know it ends in a lightsaber duel in A New Hope, and Obi-Wan Kenobi dies. So, while they can certainly... Well, I don't even know if I'd want to have Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader even meet each other. But, it could potentially happen. But they can't really do anything too long-lasting. By contrast, he can actually fight the Inquisitors because, who knows who the third sister is? She's, just a new character, and they can have him kill her off if they need to. I also like the idea as well of Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is probably more powerful than the Inquisition. I think I might have got this wrong, and you can correct in the comments if I have. But I think the Inquisitors aren't potentially as dangerous in terms of their force powers as the Jedi are. I think that's why they have those silly spinny lightsabers, to give them an advantage. So it would be interesting to see Obi-Wan actually have to fight somebody who's less powerful than he is, but he can't reveal that he's actually a Jedi. So he has to use things like blasters or, his physical skill, and try and cover up the fact that he's actually force sensitive. I also like the fact we seem to be going back to Coruscant again. I really liked that in Attack of the Clones. I like the idea of the sort of seedy underbelly of the Star Wars world. This kind of, urban environment which looks nice on the surface but actually is quite horrible once you delve underneath. So it would be really cool to see that again. I know there were rumours that they'd actually going to show Coruscant in, I think it was season 2 of The Mandalorian, and they never did, and I was a bit disappointed about that. So I think it would actually be quite good fun to see it once again, and see actually how it's changed after the Empire gets in control. Talking of the Empire, of course, Darth Vader is going to be played by Hayden Christensen again, which is going to be quite interesting. I think this is going to be the first appearance of Darth Vader in live action anyway, where he's not voiced by James Earl Jones, which could be really interesting. I think you can actually hear Hayden Christensen's voice as Darth Vader on the trailer, and I think it's quite interesting.
You still want Kenobi? He's gone.
I think Hayden Christensen actually does quite a good job. It's not James Earl Jones, it is different, but it's near enough that you can imagine that it is, and that's really all you need. I think it's also nice that Christensen gets another go at being Darth Vader. I say Darth Vader. He was only Darth Vader really for half of Revenge of the Sith. But you know what I mean. Particularly after he got such a rum deal in the prequels. I must admit that I never, hated him particularly as Anakin Skywalker. I think he really looks the part. And yes, his dialogue was a bit rubbish. But on the other hand, that's not his fault, is it? He didn't write it. He just had to act with what he got. So it's not, well, hopefully it will be nice to actually see him get some decent lines for a change, and then see how he fares then, and hopefully he'll do a lot better. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this TV show. I think it's going to be quite good. I think the aesthetic looks really good. It looks like they've spent a lot of time and effort on it. Ewan McGregor seems very involved and very keen to make sure that the show is a success. And after the sort of mediocre performance of The Mandalorian, I think Disney would be quite keen to get another Star Wars show out that has really good ratings. So yeah, that was the Sherlockian. Thanks very much for watching, film fans, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.